What's going on, guys? Welcome to a review for the Chainsaw Man movie. This is the Reze Arc movie, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
Yeah. Of course, it's obviously it's not recommended for people who haven't watched or read up to this point in the manga. So, uh, the
Yeah,
movie, the
I
movie,
mean, it does work well as a self-contained story, but I mean, you obviously want to know who the characters are before going into the movie because I mean, if you don't know that, you're just going to be lost.
yeah. Plus, of course, other oftentimes some of these anime films that follow up on the shows would often recap what happened prior to this, but unfortunately, this movie doesn't have a recap. So you're
Well, I'm
just
kind of glad they didn't do
yeah.
that, to be honest. Like, they didn't waste time recapping. I mean, there's a season of Chainsaw Man you can watch before the movie, which obviously you're supposed to do that
Yeah.
for just watching the movie.
Yeah, so the movie immediately picks up right after the events of the first season, which they ended up beating Katana Man. So what happened? It actually does pick up at a moment like right after the first season, in which Denji has a dream walking down an alleyway, and he finds this door, which Pochita is right behind it, but Pochita warns him not to open the door. Um, Obviously, this is like a major plot point that'll be, talked about like, much later, even possibly even maybe the next season. But of course, it's not getting into that. So Denji wakes up alongside uh, Power and Aki. Power, well, she grows two additional sets of horns, and of course her top horns get much longer after what happened during the fight against Katana Man. Reason being is like she consumed like the blood of many different zombies she was fighting, during that final fight.
Yeah, and I guess if she consumes enough blood, then she grows more another set of horns.
Yeah. Uh, and of course we do get the opening song for the show, which is I think was the same artist who did
Yes,
the
it's
opening.
the same artist.
Yeah, the same artist who did the opening for the first season. It was pretty good, by the way. Of course,
Mm.
the opening sequence felt more like as if it was part of it, like as a standalone season of sorts. Um, for Power, well, unfortunately, like she does get sidelined for pretty much the entirety of this movie, due to the fact that she has to get that excess blood she consumed out of her body. Um,
Yeah, I mean, there's a subplot throughout the movie with Aki, but yeah, Power is unfortunately not in the movie until really the beginning and the very end of the after credit scene.
yeah, so and I think after Power gets uh, I guess sent away to get her excess blood removed. Denji gets temporarily assigned to the Shark Fiend. I think his name is Beam, as his
Mhm.
temporary partner, which of course Denji doesn't take a liking to because he's only into girls, and he doesn't take too kindly to Beam's, I guess. I guess his fanboyish nonsense towards Denji, even though like
Yeah,
he's only known him for like a short time. Um,
yeah. Beam. I mean, well, it works to Denji's advantage to some extent. That Beam is just will pretty much do anything that Denji wants him to do.
Yeah, which of course follows up into the next scene in which Makima ends up taking Denji out on a movie date, in which pretty much they go the entire day just going on a movie marathon, watching a movie like all the way up until midnight. Most of the time, well, most of the time they just like sit in the theater just watching each movie, just pretty much critiquing everything they watch until um all of a sudden the last movie they end up watching by themselves uh end up putting in the tears. uh it also goes into like Denji's further development of like about him wanting to be with Makima. And
Yeah.
well, this also complicates things in which of course the the title character Reze, steps in and supposedly takes a liking to Denji, and Denji throughout this entire movie, well, I guess you could say the first half of this movie has this existential crisis in whether or not which girl has to like.
Yeah, like he feels obviously like he starts to develop feelings for Reze, but he also has feelings for Makima, and in a way, he feels like he's like sort of, I guess, cheating on her in a sense that now, like, Reze, right after really meeting Denji, she comes on pretty strong and wants to spend more time with Denji. Uh, they meet up at a cafe that she works at, and she basically like, he starts frequenting the cafe more. And she starts inviting him to, well, eventually she ends up inviting him to like go to an abandoned school at after dark, and to sort of like, I guess, do some kind of urban exploration thing or something. But yeah, he feels like he's like cheating on Makima, but of course, unbeknownst to him, he's, well, both with Makima and with Reze, he's really just kind of being manipulated. But unbeknownst to the viewer and to Denji, we're led to believe that, Reze really is into him, and that there is like this spark of a romance between them. And, Denji is basically spending the first half of this movie like struggling with whether or not he wants to be with Reze or with Makima.
So it happened. So like once they were in this school, they end up like skinny dipping in the pool.
Yeah. Also, like, I did want to, like, we didn't really address the there was definitely like there was, I don't know if there was like a total complete staff change or anything, but there was definitely like a director change from the series to the movie. There was also a shift in art style. So it doesn't look completely different from the series. But the way that the characters are drawn is a little bit different from the way they look in the series,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit closer to the manga art style. Also, like the colors, like the color palette. A lot of people got on the anime series because I guess the colors were a lot more like washed out in compare, as opposed to like what a lot of fans thought they should have been. So the colors are a lot more vibrant in the movie. And there's also like, I mean, the pool sequence, like we were about to talk about, was, in my opinion, like the most impressively animated sequences in the whole movie. Like aside from, the whole movie really is really like well animated. Like the series I thought looked great anyway. But the movie looked, in my opinion, at least 10 to 20 times better than the series somehow. And we know that like they spent like a few years working on the movie after the series came out. And it really does look like, based on what we've seen from the animation, like it does look like they actually spent that whole time working on the movie. Because like it looked like there's some like a lot of like hand drawn animation sequences and stuff.
Yeah.
Especially with the pool scene.
Yeah. So
But,
there's another thing I do want to bring up is, of course, I did also end up watching, the Demon Slayer Infinity Cast movie. My critique of that movie, like this, even though like it was good, I did feel like it was paced in such a weird way that it was, that it felt like it was multiple episodes like meshed together. Unlike for Chainsaw Man, it feels like the pacing felt a little bit more natural in a sense that it needs to be like a movie format instead of like being cut into like separate episodes. Which I hope.
Yeah,
Which I hope that they don't do it for this movie.
it would be weird if they cut this into episodes. Like it doesn't really feel like this could be re-edited into like a series somehow.
Yeah, because Demon Slayer, like Ufotable did that with the Demon Slayer Mugen Train. Unfortunately, with that, like they just like released that movie first, and then they just cut it into multiple episodes, like within a season during the Entertainment District Dark. And I could assume they're more than likely gonna do the same thing with Infinity Castle. Whereas in here, it just feels like the pacing is a little bit more natural in a sense, which you don't feel like that there's like if it's like it feels like a compilation episode or compilation movie of sorts.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it also feels like that the arc they're adapting could be something that could easily be made into a
Oh
movie.
yeah.
Whereas, like, I guess with the Demon Slayer story arc that they're adapting, it would maybe be a little bit more tricky to make it into like a movie trilogy as
Hmm.
opposed to just another season of Demon Slayer.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. I do feel like yeah. It's regardless. The movie feels like like it's paced more naturally than how Demon Slayer was. With
Yeah,
two films. Um.
I mean, I like with the movie that they spend about, I mean, I would say about half the movie just sort of like building on Denji and Reze's relationship, especially considering, that, I mean, obviously we're going to talk about spoilers, but, just the tragic way that things end, obviously, with the way things turn out in the movie and with the story arc
So
with him and Reze.
yeah. So after they end up playing in the pool. Like another like they got caught up in another rainstorm that they're stuck inside. Reze goes to the restroom to wash up, while Denji, of course, is still dealing with his existential crisis of like who he really wants to be with. Then Reze all of a sudden gets ambushed by this assassin who's looking to torture her in order to control Denji. But this is where Reze's, you know, true colors just reveal herself, in which she quickly overpowers this guy, like basically just choking him to death. And at the same time, she ends up, singing some sort of lullaby in Russian.
Yeah, which is hinting as to her origin, which we don't really get an explanation of until the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Also, the guy who was, well, the guy that was trying to kill her is contracted with the devil called the Typhoon Devil, and after she takes him out, Reze basically forms a contract with the Typhoon Devil.
Yeah. And of course, Reze, goes back to Denji. Um, tells him that they should go to a Japanese festival sometime later. But before this, we do catch up with Aki, who's of course assigned to a new partner, which is the Angel Devil. We barely got much of the Angel Devil at the end of the first season, but this one we get a little bit more about who he is and what his personality is. Of course, Denji and some people could easily mistake this guy as a girl based on his feminine appearance.
Yeah,
We really get to see um, Angel's personality is a little bit lazy and has some form of some lack of empathy towards human beings. Um, and then of course this get it almost gets to the point where Aki doesn't feel like that him and the Angel Devil is like compatible with each other. We all we do get we do know that he's still contracted with what was it? Was it the Time Devil or the Future Devil? That
Future Devil.
okay, yeah, he's still like contracted with the Future Devil, which in turns he gains his ability to see in the future for as of right now for I guess in a few seconds at a time. But yeah,
Yeah, like that comes into play later when the big fight with Reze happens, and Aki does end up like fighting her briefly when he can predict her movements.
yeah. We catch up back with Reze and Denji, which they end up going to the local Japanese festival, and they go to up a hillside to watch the fireworks later, in which Reze decides to ask him if he wants if he wants to leave the city with her, pretty much abandon public safety because of how it goes even back to when they were at the school, because as we know, Denji has never went to school or had any proper education due to the fact that he works with
Oh yeah.
yeah he works
So that's another thing that we kind of forgot to mention is that Reze supposedly is a student, and that's what kind of when that gets brought up. she's surprised that Denji tells her that he's never actually been to school, because as we know, like Denji's just lived a life where he doesn't really know what like a proper house or food, or, he's not really had proper housing or food, or ever had a proper education. So he doesn't know like what those, a lot of those things that people take for granted. He sees as like, that like something that really until this point was just out of his reach. Like
Yeah.
he's not used to it.
I mean, you would think that, with Denji's occupation that Makima would have offered something like that, like, something, offer some kind of benefit, for his job.
Yeah, that is a good point. I'm actually surprised that that him getting some kind of an education isn't actually part of him being like a devil hunter working for, he's already he's working a job technically. I mean, you would think that they would give him some kind of an education,
Yeah, but
along with that.
yeah, but unfortunately, it comes to show like how much Makima only cares about like just. Well, I mean, I'm trying not doing my best not to spoil too
Well,
much.
yeah, I mean, without spoiling too much, like she doesn't really. I mean, we can assume as much. Like she doesn't really care about Denji. She's more after something else, and she's pretty much just using Denji. As we eventually find out with Reze, of course, that she's, Reze is just kind of using Denji in a way as well, just to get to something else.
Yeah, which of course it's revealed like, well, yeah, so they end up kissing, but it results in her uh literally biting his tongue out in the process before uh you know severely injuring him and cutting his arm off before Beam jumps in to save him. And then of course Reze finally reveals herself as being the bomb devil.
Yeah. And then she immediately chases after both Denji and Beam. And we've discovered just how fast and how powerful she is, like using her explosions to just go flying and easily catch up with Denji and Beam. I think there's a group of private devil hunters that try to fight her, but of course they get taken out pretty easily. And this is where we see like this. I mean, we've seen how well animated it's been up to this point, but I really feel like the animators flexed their muscles in a lot of these scenes with Reze and Denji, even just her giving chase, but also just her and fighting Denji and the other devil hunters too.
Yeah, she can just literally just form an explosion just by the snap of her fingers.
Yeah.
And of course, it gets to the point where Beam carries Denji to, what was it, one of the public safety division headquarters, where he finds both Aki and Angel, training several recruits. So like like Aki gets everyone to take Denji away from there, while members of the public safety division try to hold her off, but to no avail, which she basically just kills everybody despite their best efforts.
Yeah, they try to stop her, and then there is a guy, I don't even remember his name. He was apparently like a friend of Aki's. He's also, I guess, contracted with the Fox Devil, and he tries to basically, which he uses the cone ability to try to like eat her. But the Fox Devil ends up like just spitting her out.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we see to how much of an extent, like how powerful like she really is. Like even like when she has her head like well, actually no, she beheaded herself because two members of the safety division like apparently put some kind of poison in her.
oh yeah.
Yeah, which prevents her from like temporarily prevented her from using her abilities. So she cuts her own head off. I think she throws her head into the division headquarters building, which explodes. And then like her bottom half of the body still moves around somehow. And I think her head actually regenerates her entire body, and then she just kills everybody in that building by basically like catching up to Aki and then taunting him with like two of the members' heads that she like apparently just beheaded.
Yeah. Yeah, because Aki tries to drive away with Angel, Denji, and Beam, and of course she ends up, giving chase, and they end up going into the city, and then of course we just see like a ton of collateral damage that ends up being caused by Reze just like blowing everything up around them.
Not just Reze, but the Typhoon Devil also.
Yeah, also the
There.
Typhoon Devil.
Yeah,
But yeah, of course, Denji ends up waking up and transforming back into Chainsaw Man. And of course, I also want to point out that Chainsaw Man is at least not fully just CG like he was in the series in the movie. I think pretty much every time he's on screen, he's actually just like 2D animated, not CG. So that's good at least. I was actually glad that he actually looks, he looks a lot better in the movie than he does in the series.
yeah. There is another moment in which when the Typhoon Devil is like generating strong winds, it nearly it nearly kills Angel to the point where Aki has to catch him, by the hand. Unfortunately, for people that if you remember, like back in the end of season one, anyone who's ended up physically touching the Angel Devil will end up losing part of their lifespan. So, because of what he
Mhm.
did, he ended up shortening his lifespan supposedly by another 2 months.
Yeah, well, and we already knew that Aki doesn't really have long to live anyway.
No, I mean
Um,
he's already. I mean the number of devils that he's contracted with, like he's already shortened it on numerous occasions. So it's hard to tell like how much time he has left. Um, so yeah, but pretty much the remainder of this film is the fight between uh Denji and Reze. It goes like back and forth between them, and the animation just goes all out, but berserk throughout this entire. Pretty much, this is like the highlight of the film was just the fight between them.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's a fight between them and also with the Typhoon Devil because the Typhoon Devil does end up showing up and causing even more damage. And like that scene you mentioned earlier with Aki trying to drag or trying to save Angel. At first, like he does let Angel go, but then he grabs onto his hand. But yeah, that's of course because of the Typhoon Devil. And the Typhoon Devil shows up and is just like destroying everything in his path. So Denji basically uses Beam as almost like he discovers that he has like chains he can use that he basically they said that he could use it almost I guess like Spider-Man to sort of like link the chains onto a building and swing himself around.
Yeah, pretty much.
But he ends up using it as like a harness or something to basically to mount Beam and use him to use him as a mount so that he can get close to the Typhoon Devil.
Yeah, and pretty much like Denji can use his chains as some form of whip, of some kind, which it's just like a pretty useful ability that he can now use for long distance purposes, rather than like how he had to deal with like his short range combat against the Katana Man back in season one.
Yeah. So basically, Deji ends up just throwing himself into the middle of the typhoon, and of course ends up using his chainsaws to cut through the typhoon devil.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think he killed him in the inside, right? Or did he just slit his throat?
I think so. Yeah. But yeah, of course, it's after this that Reze catches up with him, and this leads to a sequence which is. I mean, everything. Like I said, everything else just looked amazing, but I think the two really standout ones were near the beginning of the movie with the pool sequence, and like right near the end of this long fight with Reze and the Typhoon Devil, where Denji is like fighting Reze in a building, and Reze is just constantly like blowing up, and we see the building explode. Like of course before this happens, like they're both fighting inside the building, and there's like a sequence where like we can't really see anything, and then we just see like the light from Reze's explosions, or we see her like about to deliver like a punch to Denji, and that's the only thing we see, and it just looks incredible. Like, I mean, I don't know how they animated this, but it just looks so crazy. And we see the building just blow up from the inside, and Denji just being punched through, or just being like blown out through the building. Like, it just looks insane.
I mean, there was also one point in the fight in which she gained the upper hand and pretty much like just destroyed all of like Denji's limbs, and it's just his head and his torso. But of course, he miraculously like regenerated his entire body thanks to Beam and Angel's help. But yeah, it gets to the fight finally ends, in which Denji wraps his chainsaw whips around both him and her, and they end up sinking to the bottom of the sea, which pretty much
because Denji figures that if she gets wet, that she can't continuously explode.
So they end up like stuck on the bottom until Beam ends up saving both of them, and they sit and it gets to the point where Denji and Reze sit and talk on the beach, with Reze admitting that it was her mission to capture not only just
she asked Denji why he bothered to save her. Because he could have just left her. But and Denji, like, a part of him still believes that her feelings for him were real. Because of course Denji, that's like one of the main things about Denji as a character is he's just he's still just like a naive teenager, and he doesn't realize he doesn't really believe that there is really any ulterior motives with Reze. But at this point, like, Reze just tells him to his face that everything was fake. But then Denji does bring up a really good point, like, as she's like just kind of walking off, like, why didn't she just kill him when they first met? Like, why did she go to the trouble of even just pretending to get to know him, and and all that. And Reze doesn't really have, I don't really even think she has a good response to that.
No. Reze, of course, decides to leave the country, or leave the city, before Denji, like, ask Reze, like, that they'll meet again at the cafe if she has,
Well, he says he'll be waiting there.
Yeah, he'll be waiting there, and then of course we finally learn the truth about Reze, with Kishibe informing Aki that Reze is an agent sent by the Soviet Union after being experimented on as a child to become the bomb devil.
Yeah, and that there's apparently also other orphans that have gone through the same thing. And she's just one of the many orphans that have been like had these experiments done on them.
Yeah. So, of course, like, we do catch up with Reze again, who's about to leave the city, but but after like getting a flower from one of, I guess one of the street vendors, not street vendors. It's
no. So there's this like group of people that are taking donations for victims of devil incidents, and I think this is to show that Reze is not really like completely heartless or anything, that she's just kind of that's she's more just a victim of having been experimented on by the Soviet government, and that's all she really knew. But she still actually possesses some amount of empathy, because she does donate some money, and as a result, like, she gets a flower, and I think that's really like what kind of what kind of convinced her to like just turn around and go back, because we didn't mention it, but earlier in the movie, like, there is a scene with Denji like performing like some kind of a magic trick or whatever with like a flower that he like eats and spits back out and gives to her. So that, I guess, in a way, that kind of like reminded her of him. So she decides to turn around and go back. And unfortunately, as we should probably assume, this isn't going to end well, because as she's going back to the cafe where Denji is waiting, right when she's about to reach the cafe, like, I think there's a bunch of mice that just like that come out of nowhere, out of the alleyway, and then of course that's when Makima shows up and just blocks her path.
and then of course she talks about like it was brought up earlier in the movie too, with Reze asking Denji if he wants to be the city mouse or the country mouse. And of course,
Yeah.
Makima also brings this up as well, like, whether which one she would rather prefer, and she prefers the city mouse. Um, and and of course, we all know that, like, she wants Denji to herself, and obviously, I think Makima knew that, what was going on with Reze and all that stuff. So yeah, it uh just before, like, Reze could end up going back to the cafe, like, she ends up getting impaled by one of Angel's spears, and she has one of her arms cut off. But of course she does try to put up a fight against Makima. Uh, but unfortunately, both her and Angel overpower her to the point where, like, they literally just incapacitate her before she can reach the cafe.
Yeah, and yeah, that's just kind of the tragic nature, I would say, of this particular arc is that Denji is kind of it's teased that Denji might actually have some happiness for once in his life, and there might be a girl that actually cares about him, and it's just kind of ripped away from him in a way. But I mean, kind of unbeknownst to him, I guess in a way it's probably for the best that he doesn't really know what ended up happening to Reze. Like he might just assume that she disappeared somewhere. Because I don't even think currently in the manga he really knows what actually happened to her.
No, I mean, we don't even know that she's. I really doubt that she's dead.
Yeah,
She's
I
not
mean,
dead.
well, there's also the debate of whether or not she could potentially come back just because of she is not, because of her being, contracted, I guess, with the devil and having experiments having been done on her that she might be able to, maybe she could come back. But yeah, I mean, I as far as I know, from what I've read so far, is she doesn't come back. But I mean, I guess it's possible she could.
Yeah, I mean, she's come back from worse. I mean, like, we literally saw her
Yeah.
head, you know, head get torn off, and she can just regenerate from that. But obviously, I think it's obvious, like, there could be some kind of ulterior motive for her to be used by Makima later in the down in the series. But yeah, like you said,
Uh,
no, I
well,
don't
I
know.
mean, I will without spoiling things. If not Makima, I'll say somebody else potentially, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, so we do get a post credit scene after the credits, in which Denji is of course still ready waiting for Reze, but of course he pretty much all at this point just has given up on waiting for her, and that's when Power arrives instead, and of course Power sees Denji holding a whole pack of of bouquet of flowers, assuming that that it was meant for her. But of course, Denji, decides to just eat the entire bouquet for himself, which leads to Power just, like, I guess arguing with Denji, wanting the flowers to herself. But it ends in kind of a silly, lighthearted manner. But yeah, that's
yeah,
where the movie ends from there.
I guess it makes up for Power not having really been in this arc at all. Like at least she shows up at the end. But that's really all the after credit scene was just more like this comedic scene. I was kind of hoping that maybe there would be potentially a tease for season 2, maybe a tease for the Gun Devil, but unfortunately we don't get any of that. I mean, of course, I'm sure there is going to be a season 2, but yeah, at the same time, I'm kind of glad that the movie does kind of work as a more of a self-contained thing. It's not really like necessarily trying to see season 2 or anything, even though I kind of wish it did. But yeah, I thought the movie was great. It's probably one of the best animated movies I've seen recently. And I think, it definitely reflects them having worked on the movie for like 3 years since the anime aired. It definitely looks like, from what I've seen, it definitely seems like that's what they were working on, was this movie. Even though, as we know, Mappa has worked on like various other things after Chainsaw Man aired. They probably had, like, I would assume, like maybe a dedicated staff, team that was just working on this movie. But yeah, I was really impressed with it. Like, there was a lot of like just really impressive animated sequences. I mean, really, like I said, the whole movie looks incredible, but Like if I were to pick two that, like I mentioned before, just the pool sequence looked amazing, and the sequence like mostly near the very end with Denji fighting Reze in that building just looked just insane. Um, and I'm also glad that Denji or Chainsaw Man was animated in 2D and not CG. The only CG was of course the cars, which makes sense, and of course like some of the maybe like CG environments some of the characters were walking in at times. Uh, but yeah, I mean it was a great movie. I mean, and the story arc, just like I said, works perfectly as a movie. So I think it was actually a good idea for them to make this into a movie and not like part of another season of Chainsaw Man. So I'm glad they did that and not, they didn't make this like part of season 2 or something.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a great anime film. I'd say it's a little. I prefer this more than I did with Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, just due to the fact that it's
Mm.
that it's I feel like the pacing in Chainsaw Man was significantly better um than Demon Slayer, just due to the fact that that it doesn't feel like it's like like this like Chainsaw Man doesn't feel like it's a compilation film. It's more of its own thing, rather than it'll be like cut into like like different episodes that'll be aired later, which I hope it won't be. But yeah,
Yeah, I think that would be a bad idea if they did that.
yeah.
They are, however, doing that with the Jujutsu Kaisen movie that's coming out,
Uh,
where it's
I don't
it's just
I don't think that really
season.
counts. I don't think that really
Well,
counts because that's
well, they're basically, well, it's kind of like the opposite in a way. It's like they took the episodes from the series and they're turning it into like a compilation movie with like the beginning of season 3.
yeah. I think they said the first two episodes of the next season. So,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, but overall, I did enjoy this movie. I think it was I was a little bit skeptical at first, but I do feel like that it was the right call to make the Reze arc as a separate film because I'm not sure like how it would have worked if it was put into season two. Of course, like with everything that's going to be happening with that upcoming arc, yeah, definitely think it was the right move that they did this.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely. I will say again, without like spoiling anything, I think it's definitely getting people prepared for with the tone of it, with some of the tragic things I'm just gonna say that are gonna happen in the arcs that are gonna follow this one, or with particularly with the Gun Devil arc that's gonna follow this arc as far as from what I remember. There's a lot of like really tragic stuff that's gonna happen in that. So I think it's definitely getting people prepared for that in a way. But yeah, I thought this was even honestly like I liked it even more than season 1 of Chainsaw Man. It was even better than that. But I mean, not that like I said, not that Chainsaw Man season 1 looked bad or anything. I actually was fine with the direction of Chainsaw Man season 1. A lot of people were also complaining like that it was I guess the framing of it like, oh, it looks too much like it's a movie or whatever, not knowing that Tatsuki Fujimoto himself is like a cinephile. So, I mean, I'm sure that's kind of what he would want. And I mean, this movie in and of itself is very much like, is very cinematic in the way everything is framed and shot. And the way that scenes are, I mean, not to mention just the animation, but the way that the scenes look. It's kind of framed in a very, I would say, very similar way to season 1, where I mean, season 1 is kind of, in a way like approached like a movie. This, I mean, being a movie, obviously it's approached like it's a movie in terms of the way it's directed. I mean, if you had told me the director from season 1 worked on this in terms of like just the general direction of it, I would believe you. So I mean, honestly, if I didn't know that it was a different person, I would have just assumed it was the same guy. But yeah, I mean, the only major differences is just the art style change, and I guess you'd say the color palette is different. It's a lot more vibrant and not as I guess washed out maybe as season 1. But I don't know. I think it really is more so to the benefit of the movie. I would say yeah, it's definitely closer to the way that the manga looks.
Yeah, most definitely. Um, if I were to personally give this a rating, like it'd be hovering somewhere between like an eight or a nine of sorts because
Honestly,
I
like I give it a 9. Like I couldn't. I mean, like we mentioned, it has a pretty tight pace. The pacing is not an issue. The way everything looks is just incredible. I think it tells like a really um a pretty good like self-contained story. But of course, you would need to have the background information of season one. But it in and of itself, like just as a standalone story, it works just as well. Um,
like
and
other than like the scenes like the pool sequence or the fight between Reze and Denji, I really do like that it further develops Denji as a character even more. Just due to the fact that
yeah,
he's dealing with that we see like his existential crisis of like who he really wants to be with, like, and of course like literally experience like I guess love in a more natural sense for the first time, rather than just him just like he just needs to be with somebody instead of like having this natural progression of like being in a relationship with someone.
yeah. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say about it. It was definitely worth the wait in between season one and the movie. Um, I mean, I think this is really the best we could have asked for. I mean, all we can do, I suppose, is that hope that we get the same level of quality for season two, especially since I'm assuming season two is probably going to be adapting the rest of part one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely hoping that we get something on the same level for season two.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but
It
yeah, I
is.
don't know if you have anything else to say about it.
Yeah, it is kind of a shame that we don't get any hints of when season two or the remainder of season uh, is going to be airing. But I could assume well we might not get it for maybe another couple of years, uh, if that's what they're aiming for. But
Yeah, especially considering that, like, I think Mappa's currently doing. Well, I mean, I think we have like Hell's Paradise season two that's happening, and probably some other things.
yeah,
But
and Jujutsu
uh,
Kaisen is going to be airing
yeah,
next beginning of next year. Um, but yeah, it was a really good film. On a side note, you did mention it before we started recording that you watched it in 3D.
oh yeah, I didn't even. It's funny because I didn't even know that this was in 3D, which is just a honestly like a weird choice. I can't remember like the last. I don't know like the last anime movie that came out in 3D. But it was just honestly kind of a weird choice for them to do this in 3D. There were some sequences that looked pretty good in 3D, but it also felt just really weird watching some of it in 3D because like I mentioned before we started the recording, even the subtitles were in 3D, so it's not like you could like if you were like having a hard time reading it, you could just sort of like lift up your glasses and try to read the subtitles because it was also like done in 3D. So yeah, I mean, there were some parts where like yeah, things were like popping out at you, but then there was some sequence where I'm just like wondering, I'm like, did this really need to be shown in 3D? Like, I feel like it would actually look better if it weren't in 3D.
I only watched it at a standard screening, and it still looked
Yeah.
fine as it was, with the animation and the fight scenes. So I didn't really
I
feel the need to
If
watch it.
there's one scene I could point to that looked better in 3D, it was when I think that one sequence when Reze like fired her projectiles out at the those private devil hunters and the that showed up in the car like that actually like came out at you that it looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Denji jumping into the pool like he was kind of like jumping out at you that looked decent, but um, I don't know. I've never really been on the 3D hype train, so I'm not really like an enthusiast of 3D or anything. I think there are some movies that can definitely benefit from it. I think the obvious one people would point to is like Avatar. But I mean I watched that in just standard 2D and I thought it looked fine. Maybe it looks better in 3D. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like the movie already looks amazing without just being in 3D. I don't know why they decided to have like a separate 3D version of the movie. Um, I don't know. Maybe it's just something Sony told them to do that because they wanted to have I don't know have an anime movie in 3D or something. I guess, but um, yeah, I don't know. It looked okay in 3D. I think, but honestly, if it were up to me, I would have preferred just seeing it in 2D. But I guess I don't regret seeing it in 3D at the same time.
Yeah. I don't know if it maybe there may be a small chance I might check it out in 3D uh if I have any interest. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not sure. like, I mean, speaking of that, I'm wondering, like, considering it was shown in 3D, like, how are they going to handle the? I mean, is the home video release or the digital release also going to have a 3D version, or is that just for theaters? Like,
I would say it's
I'm
mostly in
curious.
I would say it's mostly in theaters because I don't ever
Yeah,
recall Crunchyroll or Funimation ever releasing anything in 3D or having like because like the Blu-rays are set have a specific setting for it uh for it to be shown in 3D, and need to have a TV that needs to be shown in 3D, and
yeah,
need to have a separate Blu-ray player that needs to be set on 3D. So it's
yeah. It's just too much stuff to deal with, and it's also just not really worth it considering there's not much content that really is like produced in 3D anyway.
yeah.
So it's like you're doing all this extra stuff just for like maybe I don't know like a fraction of things that are actually in 3D.
Mhm. Yeah, but overall, it was a good film. And here's hoping we will get season two pretty soon. Hopefully, won't take too long. But we do know it's coming soon. That all depends on like some of the other projects that Mappa is currently working on, like Hell's Paradise and Jujutsu Kaisen coming out next year.
Yeah, I mean it's not like they're gonna catch up to the manga anytime soon anyway. I mean they're still like I mean part two as well, and if they're well into part two, so I mean I don't think we really have that to worry about. But I mean honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the manga was finished before they even get to part two at this rate.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that all being said, guys, until next time, we will see you all later.